Welcome back to Story Sport, the place where we bring you real moments of courage, hope, and miracles that remind us that even in the darkest storms, a single voice can shine like a beacon. Today, I'm taking you into one of the most emotional America's Got Talent auditions ever witnessed. A moment where the stage lights felt dim compared to the brightness of a child's heart. A performance so pure and so heartbreaking that even Simon Cowell, a man known for his toughness, could not hold back his tears. This is the story of an 8-year-old Filipino girl who survived war, lost everything she ever knew, and carried her pain into a song that touched millions across the world. A quiet hush fell over the studio long before she stepped out. The judges shuffled their papers, unaware of the story that was about to unfold. The crowd murmured in their seats, expectant but unprepared. Backstage, behind the heavy curtains and buzzing wires and flashing lights, stood a tiny girl with a microphone that seemed too big for her small hands. Her name, the one her mother gave her, was whispered softly to her by a producer as a reminder, as if she might forget it under the weight of everything she carried. She was only 8, but her eyes looked as though they had lived a lifetime. She wore a simple white dress, slightly wrinkled from travel, and a pair of old shoes that had clearly walked through more than any child should ever have to. Her long black hair had been brushed neatly, though a few strands clung stubbornly to her neck where the heat from the stage lights had begun to settle. As she stood behind the curtain, waiting for her cue, she closed her eyes. In that moment of stillness, she wasn't thinking about the cameras or the judges or the millions watching. She was thinking of home. The home that wasn't there anymore. The war had come without warning. One moment, she was playing outside with her little brother, chasing the last bit of daylight before her mother called them in. The next moment, the ground shook. Windows shattered. Voices screamed. She remembered her father lifting her up, running, shouting something she never heard clearly. She remembered the dust in the air that made it hard to breathe, the sound of explosions like the sky was breaking apart, and her mother's hand gripping hers so tight it hurt. And then, she remembered losing that hand in the crowd. She remembered calling out. She remembered crying. She remembered the last time she saw her mother's face through a cloud of smoke. After that night, everything changed. They fled. They hid. They slept on floors, in corners, sometimes not at all. They traveled across cities, then across oceans, searching for safety. The United States became the place where they would try to rebuild what was left. But for an 8-year-old, rebuilding isn't easy when your heart is still stuck in the rubble. Yet even in all that loss, she carried one thing with her. Her mother's voice. A soft humming, a gentle lullaby sung every night before sleep. A melody she learned before she learned how to write. A song her mother told her to keep forever. That song became her anchor, her comfort, her reminder that even if she couldn't hold her mother's hand anymore, she could still hold her mother's voice. When the producer finally whispered, "Go, sweetheart," she stepped forward. The curtains parted. The bright lights washed over her face. The audience, unaware of the world she came from, applauded politely. She walked to the center of the stage, holding the microphone close to her chest. She looked so small standing there, like the stage might swallow her up, yet something about her presence made the room fall silent. Heidi smiled warmly and asked her name. She said it softly, her voice trembling, but clear enough to reach every corner of the room. "How old are you?" Heidi continued. 8, she answered, barely above a whisper. "And what will you be singing for us today?" The girl looked down for a moment. When she looked back up, her eyes glistened, not from fear, but from something deeper. A memory she couldn't shake. "I will sing the song my mama used to sing to me," she said gently. Simon, who had been jotting something on his paper, lifted his head at that moment. Something in the girl's tone caught him off guard. Sophia leaned forward. "Your mama must be so proud of you," she said kindly. The girl hesitated, her lips tightening. She's not with me anymore." The room grew still. Even the air felt heavy. Simon stopped moving. Howie lowered his hands. The audience looked at her differently now. No longer just a contestant, but a child who had already endured more than most adults ever would. "I lost my home," she continued softly. "There was a war. Everything is gone. My mama, she always told me to sing. So, I sing for her now." Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't cry. She stood there like someone who had already shed too many tears and didn't have any more left. Simon leaned into his microphone. "Take your time, sweetheart. Whenever you're ready." It wasn't the voice of a judge. It was the voice of a man trying not to break. The girl nodded once, took a long breath, and closed her eyes. Then the first note came. It was soft, trembling, fragile, yet somehow, impossibly strong. It floated in the air like a whisper from another world. The melody had something sacred about it, something almost too pure for a place filled with cameras and applause. It was the kind of sound that made people stop moving, stop breathing, stop everything. Her voice carried the weight of her memories, the loss of her family, the echo of her mother's lullaby. And as she sang, the audience didn't just hear her story, they felt it. The lyrics were simple, but the emotion behind them was powerful. She sang of home, of shadows, of nights spent waiting for someone who never came back. She sang of hope, of love, of holding on to the last thing her mother gave her. Her voice rose and fell in delicate waves, each note trembling with pain and longing. Midway through, her voice cracked. Not from nervousness, but from the memory of the night everything shattered. She reached a high note, one so full of heartbreak that the entire room seemed to freeze. In the judges' panel, Simon leaned back in his chair. His eyes glistened. He blinked hard, trying to steady himself, but the emotion hit him like a wave. For a moment, he pressed his fingers to his lips. This wasn't just a performance. This was a child reliving the most painful moment of her life in front of strangers, yet somehow turning that pain into something beautiful. Heidi wiped her eyes quietly. Sophia held her chest, as though feeling the girl's heartbreak in her own ribs. Howie sat completely still, his face softened with empathy. The audience was silent except for a few scattered sniffles. It felt like the entire studio had been transported somewhere else, into the ruins of a life this child once knew, into the heart that somehow survived. And then she reached the last line. She held the final note, a long, trembling, haunting note that filled the entire theater. When it ended, the silence that followed was so deep it felt sacred. Then the applause came, not the quick, excited kind. It was slow at first, like people were afraid of interrupting something holy. Then it grew louder, fuller, overwhelming. People stood. Some cried openly. Even the stage crew backstage wiped their eyes. But there was one person who couldn't speak. Simon Cowell. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, both hands covering his mouth. His eyes were red. A tear rolled down his cheek before he even realized it. He took a breath, tried to speak, but nothing came out. The girl looked at him. Not with pride, not with expectation, just with quiet hope. She didn't need a golden buzzer or applause. She just wanted her mother's song to be heard. Simon finally lowered his hands. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Sweetheart, I don't think I've ever heard something like that in my life." He paused, overwhelmed. "What you just did, it wasn't just singing. That was heart. That was truth. That was love. And I am so proud of you." The audience erupted in cheers. The girl smiled shyly, cheers forming but still resisting the urge to fall. Heidi added, "You are a precious soul, and your mother would be so proud of you." Sophia nodded tearfully. "You touched every heart in this room." Howie leaned in. "You are why this show exists. To remind us of hope." Simon stared at the golden buzzer. He tapped it slowly with his finger as if thinking. Then he stood. The crowd gasped. The little girl's eyes widened. Simon looked at her again and said softly, "You deserve a life where your voice is heard, where your story matters, and where your pain becomes your strength. And today, I want to give you something that no one can ever take away." He pressed the golden buzzer. The explosion of gold confetti rained down on the stage like a shower of sunlight. The girl looked up, astonished, her small hands covering her mouth. Tears finally spilled from her eyes, not tears of grief, but of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Joy, hope, healing. The audience screamed, cheered, clapped. The judges stood. The entire studio felt alive with emotion, as if the golden confetti wasn't just paper, it was the pieces of her shattered world being lifted into something beautiful. Simon walked onto the stage. He didn't hesitate. He reached her, knelt down, and wrapped his arms around her gently. She leaned into him, crying softly. He whispered something to her, too quiet for the cameras to catch, but whatever he said made her smile through her tears. When he helped her stand again, she held the golden confetti in her hands as though holding fireflies. Her heart, once heavy with the weight of war, felt lighter. And for the first time since she lost her home, she felt like she belonged somewhere again. That day, millions watched. Millions cried. Millions shared her song, her story, her courage. She became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, a child's voice can illuminate the world. And though her journey wasn't over, though healing takes time, that moment on the AGT stage changed everything. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a singer, a storyteller, a little girl with a big voice and an even bigger heart. War took everything from her. But her voice survived. And through that voice, her mother lived on. This has been Story Sport, bringing you stories that remind you that even in the ruins, hope can rise. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power.